let's talk about pH and nanoparticles, how it contributes to the stability of your nanoparticles and also the drinkability of your nanoparticles. So now I'm using the G2 infrared fiber laser to make my nanoparticles. Before this, I was making nanoparticles with the blue laser. And before the blue laser, I was making nanoparticles with the plasma arc. And then before the plasma arc, I was making nanoparticles with low voltage DC. And you see the progression that went on here. And each time I transited to another method of making nanoparticles, the nanoparticles increased in availability in the body as far as the effect on the body, and the concentration, of course, went up too. So the same thing has happened with the infrared laser. But with each step came more learning processes. Let's face it, back in the beginning, low voltage electrolysis was relatively simple. Put a little electricity in there and a little bit of chems, and you were kind of like done. But as things progressed, things had to be a bit more careful with how you did things, and in order to get the better results naturally. So when I transitioned from the blue laser to the infrared laser, an issue came up with stability of the nanoparticles. Now, as you've been following my talks about the nanoparticles and lasers, the blue laser, generally speaking, except for indium, is extremely stable. And maybe zinc. I've had my problem metals throughout the whole process, starting from low voltage electrolysis, going to plasma arc, to blue laser, to infrared laser. But when we get to the infrared laser, these problems become a little bit more of a problem, I guess you would call it, than it was before. So the things that were unstable, kind of like, not a big deal, are now a little bit more of a big deal with the fiber laser. So I've had to buckle down and try and figure out what's going on here with the stability of these nanoparticles so that we can create long-term stability. Now, if you're just using the blue laser and you're just making it for yourself, you might not have to worry about pH too much. It didn't really come to light until I was trying to stabilize some really tough metals. Copper, number one. Really hard to stabilize with the infrared laser. Not too much with the blue laser. Indium was always a tough call with stabilizing, even with the blue laser. But generally speaking, if I added a little sodium citrate to it, it stabilized out and it was kind of fine. And zinc has always been a problem, whether we're making it with low voltage electrolysis or we're making it with the high-end infrared laser. Has always been a problem in creating stability. Platinum was a problem with plasma arc, because if you cooked plasma arc too much platinum with plasma arc, the stuff just fell out as solids. Not so much a problem with the blue laser, and with the infrared laser, we can cook platinum to a really high amount, but again, we got some instability problems with there, but it's not because of the concentration with platinum and the infrared laser. It's because of the pH. And with most of the metals, outside of magnesium, the pH will drop. Will go, if you start from using distilled water, which is around 6.8 pH, and you cook a metal in the infrared laser, when it comes out, it's probably going to be a 5 pH. That's kind of low. If you're just taking a teaspoon of the stuff, it's not too bad, but it's still kind of low. And what I've discovered is nanoparticles have a preferred pH range that they're happy at, where they're the most stable. And it varies from metal to metal, but generally speaking, it'll go anywhere from 6.6 pH to 7.1 or maybe even on the high end, 7.2 pH. So, I mean, I can break down the individual metals, but really, if you can keep we can keep our pH in a range of 6.8 to 7, with whatever metal we cook, that would be great. I take magnesium for restless leg syndrome at night before I go to bed. When I started making magnesium with the G2 laser, I noticed I had heartburn at night. I'm like, why do I have heartburn at night? Especially since I'm taking magnesium. Really should settle your stomach, not make it worse. And then when I got into the bit with the pH, I said, let me measure my pH of my magnesium. Well, magnesium pH was 10. 10! Oh, that explains the heartburn at night. So, while all the other metals seem to drop in pH from 6.8 to 5, magnesium goes the other way, goes high. So I had to bring the magnesium down, and to do that, I used some citric acid. Here, sprinkle a citric acid in there, bring the magnesium down, and to get it to about the pH of around 7.0. But you know what happened? A few hours later, it's back up again to pH of a high pH. Maybe not as high as 10, maybe it was down to 9. And so I had to keep adding more citric acid in there in order to get the pH down. Now once I had the pH down, after going back and forth, putting some citric acid in, lower the pH, wait a while, see what the pH is, I still had wild fluctuations. It still would go crazy, it would go low, it would go high, depending on how it felt. So what I need to do is put a buffer in there. We need a buffering agent in our nanoparticles to lock it in between the 7.2 to the 6.8 range, which is the safe range for most of the nanoparticles, and it's the best for drinking and absorbing into your body. So to do that, I made a substance I call a buffer. And basically this buffer is 70% sodium citrate and 30% citric acid. And I made it as a powder. You can make it as a liquid if you want. I'm going to use the powder for now. And powder is actually a little bit more faster, it's more potent than using it as a mixed thing. You just have to make sure that when you use a buffering agent or any of this stuff, that it's fully mixed in the solution, not that you got little tiny things sitting on the bottom, little tiny solids sitting on the bottom that haven't gotten around to dissolving. So you either got to get in there with a stirrer, mix the thing up really good, or leave it running in your stirrer for a while to mix up, and then test your pH. Once you get into your range between the 6.8 and the 7.2, the buffer kicks in. It will naturally lock the thing in within that range. I've seen it vacillate up and down a little bit, but it seems to stay within that range. I don't have any high, crazy things going up and going down. To raise the pH, you're going to use baking soda. To lower your pH, you're going to use citric acid. So whichever way you're going, up or down, put stuff in, let the stirrer go around for a while, check it in a half hour, see where you are, and after a while you'll get a idea of how much you need to add for a buffering agent. Now generally speaking, I add 3 grams of this buffering agent to the start of my process. Even before I get it into the G2 laser, I will add 3 grams of this stuff into my 300 milliliter dish here. And that does a couple things. First, it will make it easier for the nanoparticles to create. It will also pre-buffer your solution so that you don't have as much swing so hard the other way, because it will be buffering while it's making the nanoparticles. And it makes your nanoparticles more long-term stable in the process as well. Sodium citrate creates a static field around the nanoparticles. It prevents them from crashing into each other and exploding. They will gently bounce against each other because they have this electrostatic field around them, and it tends to increase stability of your nanoparticles. Now the tool to use to measure your pH is a pH meter. You can use the pH strips, but then if you dip your pH strips into your nanoparticle solution, the chemical from the pH strips goes into your nanoparticle solution, and you're not going to be able to drink it. I guess you could isolate it, pour a little into a beaker, and then do your pH test strip that way, and then discard the small amount. I kind of like the electronic method. It's a lot faster and a lot easier, and we got a pH meter here. And basically, I have done a video on how to calibrate your pH meter. So if you don't know how to calibrate a pH meter, you will watch that video and it'll show you how to do it. But basically, you want to recalibrate your meter once a month to keep it fresh, keep it accurate. You can now use that for your stuff. It's fairly simple. I mean, you turn the pH meter on, you stick it in here, and then you wait for the reading to stabilize. Now, different pH meters react differently and faster. This is a more expensive pH meter. It's not like the $15 yellow one. This says 7.02, by the way. This is zinc I got in here that I used my pH buffer in there and got it to exactly where it's supposed to be. It took all night, but anyway, that's what I got. So the cheaper meters, where is it? This is the one you'll see I do the calibration video on. This works fine. The only caveat with this cheaper meter is that it takes a really long time. If you're going in the acidic direction, it'll start counting up at a high, whatever reason it does. It starts at like 8 or 9, and then you stick it in there, and you'll have to wait for this thing to count down. It takes quite a while, a minute or 2 or 3, depending on how to reach the low acidic range. Whereas this meter, which is a little bit of a better meter, goes fairly quickly. Within a few seconds, I have an acidic range. But it all depends how much you want to spend. I mean, there are even better pH meters than this thing in the hundreds of dollar range. I think this was a $40 meter, and this is a $15 meter. And I may invest in a bit more expensive pH meter, especially since now balancing my pH is with my nanoparticles is really important, especially if I want to create stable nanoparticles, drinkable nanoparticles, and nanoparticles that have superior absorption in your body. Well, thank you for watching this video, my fellow alchemy wizards. I will have more to say. I definitely have more to say. There's not enough time to put into this video. So the next video will cover some more things that I want to talk about. Take care. Have a great day.